Back in January, President Obama came to Cedar Falls, Iowa, and he encouraged municipalities to get into the broadband business and compete against private businesses. I was wondering how you felt about the government competing against the private sector in the broadband industry.
I'm a private sector guy, and it's not surprising to me that Obama says you should do it through the government instead of the private sector, but that's just an aside. We do have to do more. And I believe the government has a role to incentivize the development of broadband access in rural areas. We don't want a digital divide. We don't want two Americas. Right now, more than half of rural America does not have access to the high-speed internet that most of the rest of America does. Now, just speaking of the difference between government and the private sector, in the so-called stimulus program, they had over $7 billion for rural internet use. None of the major telecom carriers took 1 penny of that because the government regulations, red tape, control, and bureaucracy scared them all away. So what we have to do is find alternative means. Private sector means incentivizing the private sector. I'll tell you one example, few examples I'd give. One is allow the immediate expensing of a capital exemption. So if you are a private company and you're going to invest in rural broadband, you can write it off right away instead of having to write it off over a period of time. Another thing right now, there's this big cable company, internet provider in the metropolitan area of New York, Cablevision, that is in the process of being sold to a French company. The government has to approve that. Well, they have made billions because they're able to provide internet in very dense areas where they get a high return. For that merger to go through, I'd say they have to give some of that to rural America to allow them to have that same type of broadband. You know, where our farm is up in the Champlain Valley, we have that same problem. You know, and we don't have access all the time. And, you know, you're always sitting there ready to kick the computer because it's so slow sometimes. But we have to deal with it. It's the private sector that should best deal with it. But the government can have a role in providing incentives and assistance to do that.